that 2 months prior to May, I think it was, you saw some kind of a blog involving a fellow named Paul. His last name is what?
Paul Mosen, and I had seen some blogs, and I bumped into Paul Mosen and had an opportunity to discuss them with him.
When was that?
I don't know exactly when.
Several months before May? Is that what you said previously?
No, I don't think it was very. I don't recall. I think I started seeing the blogs about 2 months before May. I don't recall. I've tried to because I thought it might come up, but I don't recall at what function I saw Mr. Mosen, and I don't know exactly when it was.
Well, do you remember telling any of the detectives that you saw blogs in January, almost 6 months before the shooting?
I don't recall.
Okay. But it was certainly before May.
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, based on your conversation with Mr. Mosen, is it?
Yes, but I think my conversation with Mosen was much closer to May.
So you saw the blogs at some time earlier, correct?
Yes.
And then you ran into Mr. Mosen, correct?
Yes.
And then you had a conversation with Mr. Mosen about the blogs, correct? And you knew the blogs were hurtful to you.
Yes.
And you knew the blogs were suggesting that you were an unfair judge.
Yes.
Okay, and then you got confirmation from Mr. Mosen that at least in his mind, he thought Darrell did the blogs. Correct?
Well, it wasn't confirmation. I had no idea, and it was the first suggestion as to who was doing it.
Okay. Did you notify Mr. Mack's attorney when you learned that Mr. Mack might be the person responsible for your blogs?
No.
Did you notify Mrs. Mack's attorney?
No.
Did you do anything to remove yourself from deciding Mr. Mack's case after you heard that Mr. Mack may have written negative blogs about you?
Why would I?
Well, one reason you might is if you thought that someone who was appearing in front of you called you Hitler, you might not want to decide or try to finish the case. Is that a fair statement, Judge Wheeler?
So if you go put a blog out about Judge Herndon this afternoon, do you get to start a new trial?
Well, one, I would never do that, and two, you're very welcome. If I did, it'd be favorable.
Do you want a moment, or are we done yet? And that was an objection, Your Honor.
That was just like this. Thank you very much, Your Honor. But the fact is that you were aware that at least someone whose case was very contentious, in your mind, may be responsible for personal attacks on you. Is that fair?
I was informed that Mr. Mack was behind the blogs by Paul Mosen.
Okay. And Judge Weller, isn't it a fair statement that to be a judge and not to have the appearance of impropriety, the wise thing to do when you think that someone is publicly defaming you and you are sitting on their case, to remove yourself from the case?
That's absurd. There are rules on when a judge is to remove himself from a case, and it is certainly not when you were insulted publicly. It's a matter of degree. When he shot me, I removed myself from the case. That was across the line. But insulting somebody publicly is not a reason to remove somebody from a case. As I said, if somebody on your side insulted Judge Herndon would not remove himself from the case. It's absurd, sir.
Okay, that's your opinion, and you're entitled
It's
to
the
it.
law, sir.
I'm going to write that down. Okay, how about when he gave you the look of death? Did you think that might be a basis for removing yourself?
Absolutely not. People are upset in family court. Most cases in family court, about 90% of the cases that come before me settle. There's about 10% of the cases that we have to litigate. There's about 1% of the cases where the people in it are taking ridiculous positions. And this is that kind of a case. And in that kind of a case, it's not unusual for somebody to be upset with the judge. And it happens.
Okay. When you learned about this blog information from Mr. Monas, did you report it to law enforcement?
No, it wasn't threatening. It was offensive, but it wasn't threatening, so I didn't inform law enforcement.
How about your wife?
I don't recall if I informed my wife. I don't tell her everything that happens at court.